and welcome back to another episode of Navigating Adulthood in IDD. Today, Queenie and I are here to discuss supervision in a solo episode. My hope for this episode is to kick off a mini-series on supervision in music therapy specifically, but also as professionals working with adults with IDD. How can we use supervision to benefit our clients the most? How can we use it to continue to grow as a professional and to prevent burnout? It's kind of things I want to dig in with this series. So to start, I want to discuss kind of my experience with supervision and how that's gone. And, my first supervision experiences started in undergrad and practicum, and those went really well. I really enjoyed the feedback from my professors and was motivated to continue honing in on my clinical skills at the time as just a student. Then into internship, I had an awesome supervisor and really felt like I grew into a professional music therapist, as we do in internship. And again, it was a lot more hands-off than maybe some of the supervision in school, which makes sense because as students, we need a lot of support. And then as an intern, that support kind of starts to decrease so that we can step into our own skills. And I enjoyed meeting with my supervisor, discussing topics, working through problems in my internship, and then bringing that to sessions and kind of experimenting and being curious. And so then internship ends and I'm a professional, so I'm good to go, right? And the first job I took out of school was a contractor position, so no supervision was provided, and it kind of sent me into a tailspin of burnout within the first 3 months of my professional career. I didn't realize the support I would need when in the field on my own, and I didn't realize the extra support I would need providing in-home and community-based services versus being in one location. My internship was at a school, and so a very different kind of environment than a lot of the job opportunities in the field. And so I found myself burnt out, unconfident in my own skills, having a lot of questions about different things with my clients and having absolutely no one to talk to. And what's difficult, not just for my experience, but for many people after school, is that supervision isn't accessible necessarily to us, especially if we're taking these contractor positions, because then you have to pay for supervision separately. And as a new music therapist, those funds don't exist. And so I really got burnt out really quick and ended up leaving that position and heading to an employee position in music therapy where I did receive supervision once a week, and that started to make a difference. My supervisor wasn't quite the right match though, and that can be a whole other topic to discuss too, making sure that your supervisor is a good match and providing you with the most resources possible. So again, I felt like I was in a position where, yes, I was getting more support, but not necessarily all the support I still was desiring at the time. And so that was also frustrating because I wanted to be the best clinician possible. And during this time, I started getting really concerned about the harm that we can cause as clinicians. There's an awesome podcast I'll link in the description below that really started my own questioning of kind of like, how do we make sure we're causing the least amount of harm in sessions as music therapists, as therapists. And I didn't feel like my needs were being quite met in the position that I was in. I felt like I needed more supervision than I was receiving at the time. So fast forward, I end up starting my own business after that second job, and a priority of mine was to find supervision. Again, it wasn't accessible at first, so I kind of had to get my business going. And then once I found, there were a couple people I felt like I really kind of clicked with online, and that's how I kind of reached out to my current supervisor that I have right now. So it's a third-party supervisor since I am self-employed, but it's been amazing because this is somebody that has more knowledge than I do, that I'm interested in as a clinician, different kind of philosophy and approaches that I'm very interested in, and who was very supportive to my needs during the supervision hour, and has helped me work through a lot of kind of self-concept issues as a therapist, but also really practical musical things that can be used in sessions. And I look forward to supervision anytime it's scheduled, and I always leave it with this great sense of relief that I think I really desired as a new professional and didn't receive as a new professional. And since starting with my current supervisor, I've built a lot of confidence in my abilities, not only as a business owner, but as a clinician through this supervision that was finally a right fit for me. And so I feel like my story has a couple of points that are important and could be experienced by other music therapists. First of all, the fact that I needed good supervision as a new professional and it wasn't available, and how it led me to pretty much instant burnout. I think burnout is so prevalent in our field right now, and one way we could prevent it is if we could find more accessible ways to provide good supervision and to grow in our own ideas as well. So I think we can really think of supervision as burnout prevention and burnout recovery for ourselves, as well as a way to grow our professional skills and learn new ideas and concepts and be excited for our sessions. Versus, I think for a while I felt kind of a dread because I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing out of school, and it was very stressful and I didn't want to cause harm, yet I didn't have the supervision to help me gain confidence in the skills that I did have and to build on them. And then another point on supervision I want to touch on is that before I could afford and before I found my good supervision fit, another form of supervision, peer supervision, really helped with burnout recovery as well, and with getting more ideas and more confidence before I could get that good fit with my supervisor. So I think there's a real benefit to peer supervision, and there's so many online communities right now. I'm in the Music for Kiddos community as well as the Creative Therapy Umbrella community, and these have been monumental in my development as a professional, as well as helped give me a sense of community that I really needed as a new professional too, because that leads to burnout too, is like not only that lack of supervision, but sometimes lack of community depending on our jobs and where we end up getting our first couple jobs. And so I thankfully found these communities and even Facebook groups that are free, and started connecting with music therapists. This was before even the pandemic, so then the pandemic hit and we were all online, and so these communities expanded even more. And I feel like this peer supervision piece is possibly an accessible point for new professionals who are looking for supervision but maybe can't afford a supervisor or don't have one at work, or to have one at work that's not a good fit. You could possibly seek peer supervision, both in forms where you have to invest, but I do believe, and I did find many accessible, affordable options as well. Facebook groups. Kim Best has an awesome Patreon group I'll link below that's really affordable, and she has a heart for new professionals too. And so really trying to find these things. Ami Kunimura has so many resources on self-care, and I feel like that can be a form of peer supervision. Even is just finding these free resources that are out there before you can invest, because as a new professional, that's really the barriers. It's like, well, yeah, I'd like to invest in an awesome community or an awesome supervisor or a course that could help, but I don't have the funds. I'm so looking for these affordable options. And I'll post some Facebook groups below too that I've found really helpful as a music therapist and as a professional. And this is very music therapy specific, and I think this is an issue in our field that can't be solved in a short mini podcast. But I link these free resources because I really do think that the peer supervision is this accessible window. I've also had the chance this year to connect with other new professionals that created their own Zoom meetings for new professionals specifically. So I'll link them below as a resource too. And it's just exciting that there's more and more of these free accessible resources as our field's kind of realizing oh, you can't just go from intern to no support. Because even now I think I still call myself a new professional, but as I'm heading into mid-professional or whatever, as I'm heading more into having more years under my belt as a music therapist, even now, I find supervision so valuable because there's so many new situations that pop up that you can almost never predict. And so you can bring that to supervision. There's all kinds of techniques and things to keep learning, and having a supervisor with that knowledge to continue learning so that we can continue being the best professional possible, to have support for that self-care, burnout prevention aspect is important for seasoned professionals as well as new professionals. I just think new professionals don't have as much access as maybe more seasoned professionals. So I think that's what I'm trying to get with that. I think that's kind of my conclusion, is how can we make supervision more accessible for new professionals and for any professional that's really needing that extra support. So let me know what you think about my thoughts. Like I said, I'm hoping to do a mini series on supervision and have some guests on to talk about music therapy supervision. But feel free to email me at bonnie@rhythmicrootsmusictherapy.org if you have any questions that you'd like to be discussed in the supervision episodes. What has your supervision experience been like, especially if you're another professional other than a music therapist? And if you want to be on the podcast, either about supervision or another topic, feel free to email me at bonnie@rhythmicrootsmusictherapy.org. And I also want to touch on, I have a Patreon page, and there is some opportunity for peer supervision with my Patreon community at patreon.com/navigatingadulthood90d. It's $5 a month. We have a monthly meeting, a Facebook group, and I create a session plan once a month for adults with IDD. And so those can all be forms of resources and peer supervision that you might be looking for as well. But really, I would love to hear from you on what your thoughts are on supervision. How can we make it more accessible so that people in not only the music therapy field, but all of these fields that work with adults with IDD, how can we, prevent burnout? How can we make sure everyone feels competent in their job and is competent in their job and causing the least amount of harm as possible with our clients, so that we can provide the best services possible that are ethical and that are so needed in our communities. So yeah, please reach out if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, I will catch you next month in our next episode. And like I said, hopefully continuing and expanding on this idea of supervision, interviewing some other music therapists and professionals. Thanks for listening. This podcast is by Rhythmic Roots Music Services, LLC, with content and music by Bonnie Haupt. Transcriptions are made by my favorite little sister, Emma Haupt. Thanks for listening.